Poor Miss Taylor. Poor Miss Taylor. I do wish she was here with us again. What a pity it is that Mr. Weston never thought of her.
Oh, you know I cannot agree with you, Papa. Mr. Weston is such a good-humoured man that he deserves a good wife. And you would not have Miss Taylor live with us forever when she could have a house of her own.
A house of her own? Well, where's the benefit in that? Look, this is 3 times as large.
Just think how often we'll be going to see them, and them coming to see us. We shall be always meeting.
Oh, Rambles is such a distance. I couldn't walk half so far.
No, Papa, nobody thought of your walking. We must go in the carriage.
In the carriage? No, that's out of the question. Oh, poor Miss Taylor. This is a sad business.
Poor Mr. Woodhouse. And poor Miss Woodhouse, perhaps. But one cannot possibly say poor Miss Taylor.
Good evening, Mr. Knightley. You are very good to join us at this late hour.
Not at all, sir. I've not said congratulations, being aware how you both must be feeling, but I hope it went well. How did you all behave? Who cried the most?
We all behaved charmingly. Everyone in their best looks and not a tear shed.
Dear Emma bears everything so well, but she is very sorry to lose poor Miss Taylor. It's a sad business.
I shall manage perfectly well, Papa. Besides, I've already made an acquaintance whom I think will make a very worthy companion.
Really? Who?
Harriet Smith. She's a young lady of exceptional character at Mrs. Goddard's school.
Yes, I am aware of Miss Smith, though can't claim to know much of her character. Are you sure this is a prudent match, Emma?
Absolutely sure, Mr. Knightley. Indeed, I've already invited her round for tea tomorrow.
Well, for the time being, it must be better to have only one to please than two.
Especially when one of those two is such a fanciful, troublesome creature.
Oh, I'm sorry, my dear. I'm afraid, I suppose, sometimes a little fanciful and troublesome.
Oh, Papa, you do not think we meant you. I meant only myself. Mr. Knightley always likes to find fault with me, you know. We always say what we like to one another.
Yes, Emma knows I never flatter her. Of course you will miss such a companion, however valuable a replacement Harriet Smith proves herself to be, but she knows how much the wedding is to Miss Taylor's advantage, so must be glad to have her so happily married.
And you've forgotten a matter of joy to me, that I made the match myself. And to be proved right when everyone said Mr. Weston would never marry will comfort me for anything.
Oh, Emma, I wish you would not make matches, for whatever you say seems to come to pass. Now please, do not make any more matches.
I promised to make none for myself, Papa, but I must for other people. After such a success, you cannot think I should leave off matchmaking.
If you're making the match means only saying to yourself, I think it would be very good if Mr. Weston and Miss Taylor were to marry, why do you talk of success? You made a lucky guess, that is all.
A lucky guess is never merely luck. And as to the word success, I do not believe I have been without claim to it. If I had not promoted Mr. Weston's visits here and given him many little encouragements, it might not have led to anything.
A straightforward man like Weston and a rational woman like Miss Taylor may be safely left to manage their own concerns. You're more likely to have done harm to yourself with your meddling than any good to them.
Nonsense. And in light of my triumph, I've already decided on my next match. Only one more, Papa. Only for Mr. Elton. I must look about for a wife for him. I think very well of Mr. Elton, and this is the only way I have of doing him a service.
Mr. Elton is a very popular man, Emma, and if you want to show him any attention, by all means invite him to dinner. Leave him to choose his own wife.
Leave him to choose his own wife? Oh no, Mr. Knightley, that wouldn't do at all. Dearest Harriet, how delighted I am to see you. Come and sit with me.
Thank you, Miss Woodhouse.
Mrs. Goddard tells me you spent the summer with the Martins.
Why, yes, Miss Woodhouse.
Well, how was it? Come on, don't be shy.
It's quite lovely, really. Mrs. Martin has 2 very good parlours, and they have 8 cows, and a very handsome summer house in their garden. Mrs. Martin is very proud of her children, of course, especially her son, Robert. She told me one day that it was impossible for anybody to be a better son, and therefore she was sure he would make a good husband one day.
And And Mr. Martin, I understand, cannot read. He is not a man of information.
Oh, yes, I believe he's read a good deal. He reads the agricultural reports and some other books about the house.
And what sort of looking man is Mr. Martin? Handsome?
Oh no, not at all handsome. I thought him very plain at first, but I do not think him so plain now. Did you never see him? He's in Highbury every now and then, and he's passed you very often.
I may have seen him 50 times without knowing. A young farmer is the last sort of person to raise my curiosity.
Yes, it is not likely you should ever have observed him, but he knows you by sight very well indeed.
I have no doubt of him being a very respectable young man, though I imagine he has his fortune entirely to make. I dare say any money is employed in his stock. He may be rich in time, but it is impossible he should have realised anything yet.
So it is, but they live very comfortably.
I wish you not to get into a scrape whenever he does marry, as to being acquainted with his wife, for she won't be anyone fit at all for you to notice. The misfortune of your birth ought to make you careful. There'll be plenty of people that would take pleasure in degrading you.
You are being so kind to me, Miss Woodhouse. I am not afraid of what anybody can do.
I would have you so well established in good society as to be independent, even of Hartfield. I want to see you perfectly well connected.
Yes, but I do not think that he would ever marry anybody without education. However, I do not mean to set up my opinion against yours. If he marries an ignorant, vulgar woman, certainly I'd better not visit.
Indeed not. Come, my dear Harriet, let us take a stroll. I need to call by the vicarage. Have you ever met Mr. Elton? He's the most agreeable gentleman. I have a strange notion that you and he shall get on splendidly. Your joy and the pleasure of this visit, Mr. Knightley.
I do not know what your opinion may be, Mrs. Weston, of this great intimacy between Emma and young Harriet Smith, but, well, I can't help thinking it a bad thing.
A bad thing? Why so?
I think they will neither of them do the other any good.
You surprise me. I've looked upon their intimacy with the greatest pleasure. How very differently we feel. I feel certain this will be the beginning of one of our quarrels about Emma, Mr. Knightley.
Perhaps you think I'm come on purpose to quarrel with you, knowing Mr. Weston to be out.
Mr. Weston will certainly support me, for he feels exactly as I do. I will not allow you to be fair judge. You are so much used to live alone that you do not know the value of a companion. Harriet Smith may not be a superior young woman, but as Emma wishes to see her better informed, it will be an inducement for her to read more herself.
Emma has been meaning to read more ever since she was 12 years old. She never would submit to anything requiring industry and patience. You never could persuade us to read half as much as you wish.
I dare say, but since we have parted, I cannot remember Emma's omitting to do anything I have wished.
I think Harriet Smith the very worst sort of companion that Emma could have. She knows nothing herself and looks upon Emma as knowing everything. And I venture to declare that Harriet cannot gain by the acquaintance either. She will grow just refined enough to be uncomfortable among those whom circumstance have placed her.
I depend more upon Emma's good sense than you. For I cannot lament the acquaintance. How well she looked last night.
Oh, you would rather talk of a person? Well, in that regard, I do not attempt to deny Emma's being pretty.
Pretty? Say beautiful, rather. Can you imagine anything nearer perfect beauty than Emma altogether?
I do not know what I could imagine, Mrs. Weston, but then I am a partial old friend.
Oh, come, Mr. Knightley. She is loveliness itself, is she not?
I have not a fault to find with her looks, and I will add that I do not think her personally vain. However beautiful she may be, she seems little occupied with it. No, her vanity lies another way. Mrs. Weston, I'm not to be talked out of my concerns regarding Harriet Smith.
And I am equally stout in my confidence of it doing them no harm. Where Emma errs once, she is right 100 times. And if you'll forgive my saying, I do not think any good can come from it being made a matter of discussion by you.
Very good advice, Mrs. Weston, I'm sure. It shall be attended to. I shall keep my ill humour to myself. I have a very sincere interest in Emma. I wonder what will become of her.
So do I. Very much.
She always declares she will never marry, which of course means nothing at all, but she's yet to meet a man she really cared for. I should like to see Emma in love, and in some doubt of a return. It would do her good.
Yes. There does seem little to tempt her from her resolution at present. although I cannot wish her to be making any form of attachment on account of poor Mr. Woodhouse.
Very well, Mrs. Weston, I shall trouble you no more with the matter.
What do you think of our having to meet Mr. Robert Martin? He did not think we ever walked this road. Well, Miss Woodhouse, is he like what you expected? Do you think him so very plain?
He is very plain, undoubtedly, but that is nothing with his entire want of gentility. I did not expect much, but I had no idea he could be so totally without air.
To be sure, he is not so genteel as a real gentleman.
I think, Harriet, that even you must be struck with the difference. I should be surprised if you could be in company with Mr. Martin again without perceiving him as a very inferior creature.
Certainly he has not such a fine air and way of walking as Mr. Knightley. I see the difference plain enough, but Mr. Knightley is so very fine a man.
Mr. Knightley's air is so remarkably good that it's not a fair comparison. But what say you to Mr. Elton? Compare his manner of composing himself. You must see the difference.
There is a great difference.
How much his business engrosses him already is plain to see. Mr. Elton, on the other hand, is warm-hearted and obliging. If he means anything, it is to please you. Did I not tell you what he said of you the other day?
No, it was about me.
Indeed. Why, you may ask him yourself. Look, there he is. I say, Mr. Elton.
Miss Woodhouse, it's an unexpected pleasure, Miss Smith.
I was just commenting on the kindly words you spoke about Harriet just the other day.
Ah, yes. You have made her graceful and easy. The attractions you have added are infinitely superior to that which nature gave her.
Oh, Harriet only wanted drawing out. She had all the natural grace of sweetness of temper. I have done very little.
If it were admissible to contradict a lady...
I've perhaps given her a little more decision of character.
Ah, yes. That is what strikes me. So much decision of character. Skilful has been the hand.
Great has been the pleasure. I say, have you ever had your likeness taken, Harriet? Did you ever sit for your picture?
Oh dear, no, never.
Oh, what an exquisite possession a good picture of her would be. I almost long to attempt her likeness myself. I used to have a great passion for taking likenesses. If Harriet would sit for me, it would be a delight to have her picture.
It would indeed be a delight. Let me entreat you, Miss Woodhouse, to exercise so charming a talent in favour of your friend.
Well, if you give me such kind encouragement, Mr. Elton, I shall see what I can do. Harriet's features are very delicate.
I have no doubt of your success. Pray make it happen. It would indeed be an exquisite possession.
But I'm afraid, Mr. Elton, that Harriet would not like to sit, for she thinks so little of her own beauty, don't you, Harriet?
Well,
you see.
I cannot imagine that she could not be persuaded. Is that not right, Miss Smith?
well,
Perhaps, Mr. Elton, if you would be so kind as to read to Miss Smith whilst the portrait takes place, now that would be a kindness indeed.
It would be an absolute pleasure. There, the matter is settled then, and I hope it commences forthwith. Very good day to you, Miss Woodhouse, Miss Smith.
Well, what do you think?
Exquisite. Quite exquisite. The way you have captured her delicate complexion. You have a talent indeed, Miss Woodhouse.
The expression of the eye is most correct, but something is amiss.
I cannot agree with you. It appears to me a most perfect resemblance. I've never seen such a likeness like it in my life.
Miss Smith has not those eyebrows or eyelashes.
Then it is the fault of her face that she has them not.
You have made her too tall, Emma.
Oh no, not too tall. Gives one exactly the idea of such a height as Miss Smith's.
She should have a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. She looks cold.
Oh, my dear Papa, it is supposed to be a warm day in summer.
Oh, dear Emma, it is never safe to be out of doors without a shawl, even in summer.
I regard it as a most happy thought, the placing of Miss Smith out of doors. It is so fantastic, I cannot keep my eyes from it.
Well, we should get it framed.
Well, there's nowhere around here could do that. It would have to go to London.
Then to London it must go. So, if I may be so bold, I should like to take the matter on personally. I shall ride to London with it myself.
Very well, Mr. Elton. Thank you very much. You're very kind. Well, I think it is perhaps time for my 3 turns in the garden. I would welcome some company.
thought they would never leave. Miss Woodhouse, I simply must talk to you.
Dearest Harriet, you seem agitated since the moment you arrived. Whatever is the matter?
When I arrived back this morning, there was a letter waiting for me, delivered in person by one of Mr. Robert Martin's sisters. He wishes to marry me, Miss Woodhouse.
Who?
Mr. Robert Martin.
Marry you? Are you quite sure?
Oh, yes, it is quite definitely a proposal of marriage. Oh, please read it and advise me what to do. It is a very good letter, is it not? At least I thought so. Oh, Miss Woodhouse, what shall I do? Is it a good letter or is it too short?
Indeed, a very good letter. I think one of his sisters must have helped him. I can hardly imagine the gentleman I saw talking with you the other day could express himself so well. And yet it is not the style of a woman. A better written letter, Harriet, than I'd expected.
Well, and what shall I do?
In what respect? In regard to this letter?
Yes.
We must answer it, of course, and speedily.
Oh, what shall I say? Oh, dear Miss Woodhouse, do advise me.
You will answer yourself very properly, I am sure. Your meaning must be unequivocal, with no concern for the pain you are inflicting.
You think I ought to refuse him, then?
Ought to refuse him? My dearest Harriet, I was under the impression you were consulting me as to the wording of it. You mean to return a favourable answer, I
No,
correct?
I do not. That is, I do not mean... Oh, pray, Miss Woodhouse, tell me what I ought to do.
I shall not give you any advice, Harriet.
I had no notion that he loved me so very much.
I lay it down as a general rule, that if a woman doubts as to whether she should accept a man or not, she certainly ought to refuse him. It is not a state to be entered into with half a heart.
Yes, of course.
But do not think I want to influence you. You must determine your own point of happiness. If you think Mr. Martin the most agreeable man you've been in company with in your entire life, why should you hesitate?
As you say, one's mind ought to be quite made up. One should not be hesitating. It is a very serious thing. Oh, Miss Woodhouse, as you will not give your opinion, I must do as well as I can by myself, and I am now quite determined and really almost made up my mind. I intend to refuse Mr. Martin. Do you think I am right?
Perfectly right. My dearest Harriet, while you kept me in suspense, I kept my feelings to myself. But now you are decided, I have no hesitation in approving. It would have grieved me to lose your acquaintance. I could not have visited Mrs. Martin of Abbey Mill Farm.
Oh, you could not have visited me. I had never thought of that before. Oh, that would have been too dreadful. What an escape.
I wonder how the young man could have the nerve to ask. He must have a pretty good opinion of himself. A woman is not to marry a man merely because he can write a tolerable letter.
No, and it is but a short letter too. I am quite determined to refuse him. But what shall I say?
I shall help you word the letter. He will console himself with the matter in no time. Besides, we must also consider the feelings of Mr. Elton.
Mr. Elton?
Mr. Elton is currently on his way to his family to show them your picture, telling them how much more beautiful is the original.
He is taking my picture directly to Bond Street.
Your picture will not be in Bond Street until tomorrow. It'll be his companion all this evening. It introduces you among his family. How busy their imaginations must be. Come, dear Harriet, you have a letter to write. Let us be done with it.
Emma. No, Harriet with you today? Is she quite all right?
I'm expecting her at any moment. It's most unlike you to inquire so tenderly of her, Mr. Knightley.
I cannot rate her beauty as you do, but I'm inclined to think very well of her disposition. In good hands she will turn out a valuable woman, I'm sure.
I'm glad you think so. And the good hands, I hope, may not be wanting.
Somebody's anxious for a compliment. Very well. I will tell you you have improved her. She really does you credit. And I have reason to believe your little friend will soon hear of something to her advantage.
I can think of but one thing. Who is in love with her?
I have reason to believe that Harriet Smith will soon receive an offer of marriage. Robert Martin is the man. Her visits to Abbey Mill Farm this summer seem to have done his business. He's desperately in love and means to marry her.
He's very obliging, but is he sure that Harriet means to marry him?
Well, means to make her an offer then. He came to consult me about it 2 nights ago. He's an excellent young man. I had no hesitation in advising him to marry. I praised the fair lady too. Altogether sent him away very happy.
I have some news for a return for what you have told me. He did speak yesterday. That is, he wrote, and was refused.
I beg your pardon?
She refused him.
Then she's the greatest simpleton that I ever believed. What is the foolish girl about?
Oh Oh, to be sure, it is always incomprehensible to a man that a woman should ever deny an offer of marriage. A man always imagines a woman to be ready for anyone who asks her.
Nonsense, a man does not imagine any such thing. What's the meaning of this? Harriet Smith refused Robert Martin? Madness if it is so, but I sincerely hope you are mistaken.
I saw her answer. Nothing could be clearer.
You saw her answer? You wrote her answer too, didn't you? Emma, this is your doing. You persuaded her to refuse him.
And if I did, which I am far from allowing, I do not believe I have done wrong. Mr. Martin is a very respectable young man, but I cannot admit him to be Harriet's equal.
Not Harriet's equal? No, he is much her superior, in sense as in situation. Emma, your infatuation about that girl blinds you. Harriet Smith is the natural daughter of nobody knows whom. She is pretty, she is good-tempered, and that is all. My only scruple was on his account, as in all probability he might do much better. But I could not reason so to a man in love. And I remember thinking, even Emma will think this a good match.
What? Think a farmer a good match for my intimate friend? I assure you my feelings are very different. Harriet is superior to Mr. Robert Martin.
She was as happy as possible with the Martins in the summer. She had no sense of superiority then. If she has it now, you have given it. You've been no friend to Harriet Smith, Emma.
You were a warm friend to Mr. Martin, but you were unjust to Harriet. She is a beautiful girl. Until it appears that men fall in love with well-informed minds instead of handsome faces, she has a certainty of being sought after.
Upon my word, to hear you abusing the reason you have. It's better be without sense than misapply it as you do.
I know that such a girl as Harriet is what every man delights in. Were you yourself ever to marry, she's the very woman for you.
I have always thought it a very foolish intimacy. I now perceive it will be a very unfortunate one for Harriet. You will puff her up with such ideas that soon nobody will be good enough for her. Let her marry Robert Martin, she's happy forever. If you encourage her to expect to marry greatly, she may be a parlour boarder the rest of her life.
We think so differently on this point that there can be no use in canvassing it. We shall be only making each other more angry. I might not pretend that I might not influence her a little to refuse him, but there was little for me to do. She knows what gentlemen are now.
Nonsense, errant nonsense as ever was talked. Robert Martin has no great loss if he can but think so, and I hope it will not be long before he does. But as you make no secret of your love of matchmaking, it's fair to assume you have plans and schemes. Well, as a friend, I shall just hint to you that if you think Elton is the man, it will be in vain. Depend upon it, Elton will not do. He's a very respectable vicar of Highbury and not at all likely to make an imprudent match. He may talk sentimentally, but he will act rationally.
I am very much obliged to you, but at present I want to keep Harriet to myself. I have done with matchmaking indeed. I could never hope to equal my own doings at Randall's. I shall leave off while I am well.
Good day to you.
Oh, we do so miss poor Miss Taylor. It is a grievous business.
I'll take comfort from knowing that she is very well. I've never seen Mrs. Weston better in my life. And besides, you see them often. Their Christmas Eve dinner is but a few days hence.
Oh, but we do not see them near as often as I could wish.
My dear Papa, we have missed seeing them but one entire day since they married.
Well, I must confess Mrs. Weston does come to visit us quite often. But then, she's always got to go away again.
My dear Papa, you quite forget poor Mr. Weston. It would be very hard upon him if she did not, Papa.
What of Mr. Weston's son, Frank Churchill? I gather he is yet to visit.
There was a strong expectation of him coming soon after the wedding, but it all ended up in nothing. He wrote a letter to Mrs. Weston to congratulate her, and a very handsome letter it was too. I thought it very well done of him indeed.
It should have been much better of him to visit.
Now, Mr. Knightley, we're not to quarrel about Frank Churchill nor anybody else. Our discordancies always seem to arise from my being in the wrong.
Yes, and reason good. I was 16 years old when you were born.
And no doubt you my superior judgment then. But does not the lapse of 21 years bring our understandings a good deal nearer?
Yes, a good deal nearer.
But not near enough to give me a chance of being right.
I still have the advantage of you by 16 years' experience. Tell your daughter, Mr. Woodhouse, she ought to set you a better example than to be renewing old grievances, and that if she were not wrong before, she is now.
Now, Mr. Knightley, a word or two more and I have done. As far as good intentions went, I believe we were both right, and I must say that no effects on my side of the argument have yet proved wrong. All that I want to know is that Mr. Martin is not bitterly disappointed.
Alas, a man cannot be more so.
Indeed, I am sorry. Come shake hands with me, we are still friends, are we not?
However much you may vex me at times, Emma, we shall always be friends.
Oh. Dinner is served.
Good evening, Mr. Elton. I'm very sorry to say that Harriet will not be joining us this evening. She is quite unwell, her throat very much inflamed.
A sore throat. I hope not infectious.
I assure you she is in safe hands. It is cold and looks very much like snow. I think it would be prudent for you to stay at home tonight.
It is certainly very cold.
You do quite right, and I will give your apologies to Mr. and Mrs. Weston.
Miss Woodhouse, I would not let the threat of a mere cold depart me of your company.
Such a shame poor Harriet won't be joining us. Her condition sadly shows no sign of improving.
She shall be missed every moment. A remarkable device. Use of a sheepskin in the carriage. How comfortable it makes them. Snow's a little icy.
Yes, and I think we shall have a good deal of it.
Fortunate that it did not begin yesterday and prevent this day's party. At Christmas, people think so little of even the worst of weather. I was once snowed in at a friend's house for a whole week. Nothing could be pleasanter.
I shan't want to be snowed up a week at Randall's.
We are sure of excellent fires and everything of the greatest comfort.
Good evening to you, Miss Woodhouse, and Mr. Elton.
So good of you to invite us. I trust my father has arrived safely.
Oh, indeed he has. He is already seated by the fire, warming himself.
Allow me to fetch you a drink, Miss Woodhouse. It would be my absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Elton.
I've never met a man more intent on being agreeable than Mr. Elton. It's a downright labour to him where ladies are concerned.
Mr. Elton's manners are not perfect, but where there is a wish to please, one overlooks a great deal.
Yes, he does seem to have a great deal of goodwill towards you.
Are you imagining me to be Mr. Elton's object?
Such an imagination has crossed me. You would do well to regulate your behaviour accordingly, Emma. I think your manner to him encouraging. I speak as a friend.
I thank you, but you are quite mistaken. Mr. Elton and I are friends and nothing more.
If you say so, dear Emma. Do excuse me a moment.
Are we a good number?
Oh, indeed we are. But I would expect two more here. Your pretty friend, Miss Smith, and my son, Frank. I had a letter from Frank this morning, as it happens, and he will be with us within a fortnight.
Why, that is splendid news.
He cannot command his own time. He's been meaning to come to us since September. But I'm quite sure now that I will see him within a fortnight. The last 2 weeks in January, in fact.
What a great pleasure it will be to you. And Mrs. Weston is so anxious to be acquainted with him.
Yes, but she is not reliant on his coming as much as I am. I fear that she fears there'll be another delay.
I'm sorry there should be any doubt in the case. But I'm disposed to side with you, Mr. Weston. If you think he shall come, I shall think so too.
Mr. Woodhouse should like to speak to you a moment, dear. He is concerned about the snow.
Do excuse me.
Your drink, Emma. I have engaged Mr. Elton with Miss Bates. She will not allow the conversation to end quickly.
Mr. Weston was just telling me about the letter from Frank.
Alas, I'm afraid it will all end in nothing.
It seems to depend upon nothing but the ill humour of Mrs. Churchill.
Indeed, Mrs. Churchill rules at Enscombe. She's a very odd-tempered woman, and his coming now depends upon her being willing to spare him. I cannot bear to think of any reluctance on his part, but I can feel no dependence on his coming.
He ought to come, even just for a couple of days. One cannot comprehend a young man not being able to spend a week with his father. I shall not be satisfied unless he comes.
On some things he has a great deal of influence, and on others, very little indeed. Come, dinner is about to be served.
Will you not lend me your support, Mrs. Weston, and induce Miss Woodhouse not to see Miss Smith until she is clear of infection? I shall not be satisfied until I have your promise.
If there is one thing I have learnt about Emma, it is that she is more than capable of taking care of herself. Mr. Woodhouse should be safely at home by now, Emma, and doubtless eager of your return.
And thank you once again for a delightful meal. A very good evening to you and your husband, Mrs. Weston. Shall we, Miss Woodhouse?
What a truly shocking turn of weather this is.
Oh, Miss Woodhouse, how I have longed to acquire this most intimate moment together.
Excuse me.
I must avail myself of this most precious moment and declare to you my undying love and devotion, sentiments which I am sure are already known to you.
Nothing of the sort is known to me. Mr. Elton, please compose yourself.
I shall be beyond salvation if you refuse me. But I flatter myself that my ardent attachment cannot fail having some effect. I am resolved on being seriously accepted as soon as possible.
I am very much astonished. You take me for my friend. Any message to Miss Smith I shall be happy to deliver, but no more of this to me, if you please.
Miss Smith? A message to Miss Smith? What could she possibly mean?
This is the most extraordinary conduct, and I can only account for it in one way. You are not yourself. Say no more, and I will endeavour to forget it.
This advance can come as no surprise to you. Surely you have observed how I admire your delicate complexion, your tender manner, your ample bloom. I am endeavouring for an obliging answer, and I am not in mind to be swayed from my course.
My astonishment is much beyond anything I can express. After such behaviour as I've witnessed to Miss Smith, this is an unsteadiness of character indeed. Believe me, I am very far from being gratified in being the object of such professions.
Miss Smith? I've never thought of Miss Smith. I've never cared whether she were alive or dead. Oh, but who can think of Miss Smith when Miss Woodhouse is near? No, I assure you, there is no unsteadiness of character. Everything I have said or done has been for yourself. Allow me to interpret this interesting silence. It confesses you have long understood me.
No, sir, it confesses no such thing. Far from having understood you, I've been in complete error. I'm very sorry, but nothing could be farther from my wishes. Am I to believe that you've never sought to recommend yourself to Miss Smith?
Never, I assure you. I should be happy to see Miss Smith. Married, of course. There'll be men out there who would not object. Everybody has their level. But I am not. I think, at such a loss. No, my visits to your home have been for yourself and yourself only, and the encouragement I receive.
Encouragement? Sir, you were entirely mistaken in supposing it. I've seen you only as the admirer of my friend. I'm exceedingly sorry, but it is well that the mistake ends where it does. I have no thoughts of matrimony at present.
I see.
I believe this is where you take your leave, Mr. Elton. Good night.
Good night.
Poor Harriet. If If I'd not persuaded her into liking the man, I could have borne anything. He might have doubled his presumption to me. But poor Harriet. Oh, whatever have I done?